I'm Seema Sharma and I'm an associate professor at IISER Pune. My main research interests are with the fundamental particles and searching for the new physics or beyond standard model physics at the LHC right now. And I'm a lot more interested in the calorimeters also for the particle detection. So in this talk, I think I have tried to keep it simple. And I mean, it's a jump between the very simplistic and a little bit of nitty-gritties. But I would be happy to come back with more detailed talk sometimes, and where I can talk about the actual nitty-gritties of the data analysis or the detection mechanism. So today I will talk about the quest for dark matter at the LHC, and this is in the context of the supersymmetry. So I will summarize what I mean by these two parts. So the bigger question we are trying to address is what are the fundamental constituents of our universe around, and how do these constituents interact with each other? So these two, both the points are very important because we need to understand how they interact with each other to know what is going on around, how the universe comes in picture, and the various observations we see around. So as of today, our best understanding is described by or summarized in the standard model of the elementary particles. And the particle content and the interactions are established over last few decades among the various theoretical and the experimental developments. And the standard model predictions have been measured, like really sort of tested to per mil precision in many of the collider and non-collider based experiments. So the particle content to describe here is, or summarize here, is essentially that we have 3 generations of the quarks. So basically, this is what I'm talking about, the 3 generations of the quarks here, and then we have the 3 generations of the leptons. And these are the sort of what we call the matter particles, and they are all spin half particles. And the way we understand their interactions is via the vector bosons. So they are mediated by these vector bosons, which is photon, gluons, and the Z and W bosons. So this is for the electromagnetic interactions, gluon for the strong interactions, and WZ for the weak interactions. And as of now, the way we understand that how these particles get their masses is via the Higgs boson, interacting with the Higgs boson. And it's summarized, their interactions are summarized via this Lagrangian, which is just a cartoon here and not the complete picture. Now, the Higgs boson has been discovered at the LHC by the CMS and ATLAS experiments a few years ago. And I would like to emphasize that this is the first scalar fundamental particle observed in the nature. And that's, I mean, right now the major tasks which are going on are also to characterize this particular particle state and understand its various properties. So when I say that a standard model of particles is a remarkable successful theory, so this is these are the results I'm showing only from the LHC measurements, and I have picked up the CMS experiment, but it's the same for the ATLAS experiment also. I am a member of the CMS collaboration, and hence I picked up this one. So what I'm summarizing here is the various particle production. So these are for the vector bosons. So the first one, for example, this one refers to the W plus jets production, and this is Z plus jets production. Now, jets are nothing but the experimental signatures of the quarks and gluons, and that I will summarize in a bit. But what I want to mention here is that what we are presenting here is the production rates. And you can see here that starting from the 10 to the power of 5 picobarn to going down to like some 8-9 orders low in the magnitude, most of these measurements, which are essentially involving the W or Z bosons or their pair productions or the triple productions, or in the different scattering modes, or the top quark and its various like top quark with a W, top quark with a Z, top quark with a H, or the various measurements of the Higgs. These are experimental measurements compared also with the theory predictions. And most of these measurements really sort of are consistent what also predicted by the standard model, calculations. These include the advanced calculations and the next to NLO and LLL calculations also. So what is impressive about this one is that when we are talking about the production rates of the order of like magnitudes of 7 or 8 or 9. So standard model is a remarkably successful theory. But there is so much we still don't know, even though we have a nicely established the standard model. So for example, some of the questions which I list here is that we really have to understand the electroweak symmetry breaking. So the new particle state we have observed, so far it looks consistent with the standard model within the uncertainties. But is it really the standard model Higgs, or it is something more going on? We have evidences of some non-luminous matter occupying the space, what we call dark matter. But is this a fundamental particle? We don't know the particle identity of this particular feature yet of the universe. Then the question always comes up is that what is the origin of the matter-antimatter asymmetry in the nature? We would have expected completely symmetric universe. Is there any kind of new symmetry? Or why the electroweak and Planck scales are so different? So what I mean here is that why the gravity, we are unable to reconcile it still with the quantum picture. So the standard model is not really a theory of everything. And what I will focus on today is essentially the dark matter component or context of it. I'll briefly mention about the Higgs boson also. So the searches for the dark matter is a long-standing quest, and it is being performed in the variety of ways. So there are few ways one can look at. So this is sort of a scattering that we are talking about. So it can be a dark matter scattering going to the standard model particles, or it can be a standard model scattering going to the where we can produce the dark matter particles. Or it can be the dark matter particles existing in the universe or in the space, and we can try to see that they can interact with our detectors, and we can get some signatures of the dark matter. So this is what we call the direct searches, indirect searches, or the collider searches. So in the direct searches, what is being done is that we have these big detectors, what we call the dark matter, really designed to detect this kind of very rare phenomena, rarely interacting phenomena, I would say. Because these are weakly interacting particle only, and their cross sections of the interaction with the standard particles are very small for any, because they don't carry any electromagnetic or strong charges. So either we can have these particles interact with our detector and we can get some signatures. The indirect ones are mostly the space-based experiments where you can see the measure the various flux and try to see if you are getting an extra flux for the high energy photons or the antimatter and things like that. At the collider ones, what we do is that we have the standard model particles colliding, which can result in some sort of dark matter particles, and we try to sort of see what can be the signatures in the data we collect. So I will focus today on this one, and the missing transverse energy is classic signature for such scenarios, and I will come to it in a minute. In addition to this directly available dark matter, which is candidates which are available in the universe, which might have existed at the time of Big Bang or later, there are also several interesting physics scenarios which predict the dark matter candidates. So one of them is the supersymmetric standard model. The idea here is that there's an enhanced symmetry of the particles and the fields, so that they're corresponding to every fermion, there is also a boson. So what happens is that this is the standard model particles, and we have a replica of these particles and differing by spin half. So for every electron, I also have a supersymmetric electron. This one is a spin half particle, and this will be then the spin zero particle. And similarly, we have for all the vector bosons also, they become fermions here. So if this happens, and the mass states which I'm getting are either the neutralinos or the charge electroweakinos, which is essentially the mixture of the electroweak fields from the supersymmetric extension. And if the lighter symmetric particle happens to be weakly interacting and electrically neutral, then it is a viable dark matter candidate. And this is essentially in most of these scenarios or the theories, we usually write this to be the chi10, that is the lightest neutralino. And supersymmetry has further reasons to be more attractive. So it does provide some sort of stability to the Higgs boson mass, because from the theoretical calculations, the masses like sort of get very divergent contributions from the loop corrections. And if we have both fermions and the bosons identical in the theory, then the effects cancel out because the contributions come with the opposite sign. So that's why it's one of the reasons that supersymmetry is attractive. Then it provides a viable dark matter candidate. Then there are other things which go in. For example, if you look at the various coupling constants which have some sort of evolution with energy, and if you have this supersymmetric extension, then they also tend to merge, and we tend towards like sort of more unified scenarios of the physics at this level. And most importantly, SUSY is just a small perturbation to the existing electroweak precision data we have or the measurements we have. So it doesn't break down what we know so far. And that's extremely important for any new physics, any new theoretical model to sustain. But the question becomes, which SUSY model are we talking about? Because since we are introducing more than 100 parameters, even in the minimal extension model, the constants, I mean, what exactly I'm talking about? Which SUSY I'm talking about? Is it the one which is my favorite or my supervisor's favorite or my student's favorite? So there can be sort of a lot of discussion and debate on that. But what we do is that we have the experimental measurements, and these constants are what we use to constrain the models. So it is a broken symmetry because so far we have not seen any counterpart of a spin half electron to be a spin 0 electron. So most likely all these supersymmetric particles are quite heavy and we still have to observe them. We have not yet observed so far. And the rates are very small. So, I mean, we have to collect more data or we have to wait for more interactions to gather in the other experiments. So there can be variety of models, and here I'm listing only few of them just to give an idea. So for example, there are some models where the lattice supersymmetric particle gives me the neutralinos and it can be a dark matter candidate with a lot of other quarks and other particles going on in the final state in the production. It could be more the gauge mediated symmetry breakings where we end up with a gravitino lattice supersymmetric particles. So here again, I have the same signature like the dark matter, but it's a different, it's not exactly same as this particular model. This will be a different one. Still, we have lot many particles in the final state. Or it can be sort of where we, in some sort of arbitrary violating scenarios in which I don't get a dark matter candidate directly. But still, we have lot many particles coming out in the final states in these PP collisions. And similarly, there are still scenarios where we invoke one more particle sector and still we can try to look for this in the colliders. So as an experimentalist, my mandate is to look at the data in a very unbiased way and probe all kinds of phase space. And we use these supersymmetric or any kind of theory models just as the guidelines to design our phase space so that we can have a good signal to background ratio. And not look at only inclusively, because inclusively the effects become very small. It's basically like if I'm looking for 10 events in 10,000 events as a background, or I'm looking for 10 events in 100 events background. So how do we go about searching for the new physics at the Large Hadron Collider? This is basically an accelerator and collider, and right now we are colliding the protons at a center mass energy of 13 TeV. And it's located at the borders of the Switzerland and France, and the tunnel spans 27 kilometers, and at the 4 interaction points we have the 4 experiments. The CMS and ATLAS are the generic purpose for the high PT studies, and the LHCb is more for the B quarks and B mesons, and ALICE is more for the heavy ion collisions. And this whole thing is 100 meters underground. So what is happening here is that every 25 nanoseconds, we are letting these protons bunches cross each other. And this is what the interactions which are happening. So this is at the 40 megahertz. So we have one interaction every 25 nanosecond. And this is sort of creating conditions close to picosecond after Big Bang. Or in other words, we are probing the space of the order of 10 to the minus 20 meters at the LHC right now. So how do we study these collision events? And that's where the CMS detector comes in picture. Since we have a wide range of signatures for the new physics and the standard model measurements, we need detectors which are as versatile as possible to make possibility to make a precision measurement as well as contain the multi-TeV particles. Because if we lose them, then essentially we see that okay, something passed by. So it looks like something missing from the detector, and that again becomes a fake signature for the dark matter. So the CMS detectors are pretty complex and intricate but state-of-art technologies which are being used. So at the collision center, we have this silicon-based tracker. It's a vertex, the pixel tracker, and then the strip detectors. And then we have the electromagnetic calorimeter based on the lead tungsten crystals. And then it is followed by the hadron calorimeter, which is based on the plastic scintillators and brass sandwich. And then it is surrounded by these muon chambers, which are also the gaseous detectors, basically drift tube chambers and raised tube plate chambers. So in all, we have like sort of more than 1 million channels in the tracking and more than 100,000 channels in all other detectors. And the total weight of the detector then comes out to be 12 tons. And a lot of it is because of the solenoid which we are using, and the return flux is being done through these these steel yokes. So we are using 4 Tesla magnetic field to trace the particles, the charged particles, and we can measure their charge this way and also their momenta. So what happens in the event reconstruction, since we are using the different detector technologies to identify particular particles, because they are sensitive and have better resolution for certain kind of particles, and then we combine the information from the various subsections. So something happened here, and particles sort of start evolving, as I showed in that collision picture. There are so many particles coming out. They pass through the detector, and this bending is because of the 4 Tesla magnetic which we have. We can measure the track of the momentum of the particles and the charge from here. Then we can measure the electromagnetic showers which are created by the electron, positron, or photons in the electromagnetic calorimeter. The hadrons have further like deeper showers, and we can measure it in the hadron calorimeter. And the muons just pass through and give signatures in the muon lepton detectors. And so these are the particles which are sort of giving the signatures, but so these are the particles which are giving the signatures, but then we have the neutralinos which don't give signatures, and they are also the dark matter candidates. So this is the missing ET. What happens is that we are colliding the protons in one direction, and in the transverse direction, so it's just the momentum balance, and I should not see any missing energy in the transverse direction also. And if I see anything, then something wrong with the detector, and most of our time goes in the understanding what is happening inside the detectors. And this is how we measure the jets, because as I said that, okay, jets are sort of manufacturing of the quarks and gluons, and what we do. Now, if I have sort of an interaction which happened, then we don't know whether it's a standard model neutrinos or whether these are the just the dark matter candidates. So what we try to do in the searching for the new physics is that so we look for the standard model constant background and continuous well understood phenomena, and then try to see either there is a resonant peak here or there is some sort of a tail which is coming out. And this is what we try to see, because what happens is that, since I said the cross section is very large for the standard model particles and very small for the new physics searches, but we try to look for these tails. And this is how this looks like in the data and background measurements. So all these histograms are the backgrounds, and this is the data. And if this new physics existed, this will look like these blue curves. So that is currently what we are doing right now. And then there are the details. We try to look for the various sort of kinematic variables where we can have this enhancement of the signal over the backgrounds. So this is what we do. For example, I said that, okay, there are a variety of signatures possible. So we try to look it in the different phase space, whether it is visible energy, invisible energy, number of particles in the final state, number of type of particles in the final state. And this is how we try to sort of gain the understanding of the detector from the data itself. So for example, if I have to measure the Z going to neutrinos, I will use the Z going to electrons. So this I can measure in the detector, and I can try to interpret this one because they are exactly same production. So these are essentially then our results, that we look in these different phase space in the different dimensions and try to see how my data is consistent with my backgrounds measured. And then we try to see that, so right now here, as an experimentalist, this is my result, that I have measured my backgrounds, that in this kind of scenarios with this many particles, how many events I get from the standard model like, or which can be explained by the instrumentation features, and how my data is consistent within uncertainties. And the next step is to interpret this, that how many new physics particles can be hidden inside these uncertainties. And then we try to give sort of in a physics scenario some sort of representative numbers, that okay, fine, these are the models that the gluino production, for example, what I showed in here, that what is the cross section, maximum cross section which can be hidden in the current data. So from these figures, the results we are showing, it is the gluino mass, and this is the neutralino mass. So from this data in this particular analysis, I say that the gluinos have to be higher than 2 to 3 GeV. All these ones which are inside these curves are excluded. We don't see in this particular model. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. I think that's pretty much it as far as the SUSY part is concerned. But then there are details that we look for the searches in the variety of final states. And the as you can see here, that we get similar curves and similar scenarios, sometimes complementary and sometimes adding to the extra phase space from the different analysis. And that's why it is important to have the complementarity. And so this is more or less the summary, that, okay, we are looking for the new physics, and so far we haven't found out anything. The most urgent one right now is to explain the stability of the Higgs mass and the elusive dark matter for like many of us who are interested in this type of topics. The next at LHC is essentially we have a well-defined plan, and right now we are here. So we have just finished the, we are finishing the LS2, and then we will have the run 3, and after 27 we will start with the high luminosity LHC. And we are already preparing detectors for that. And as I said, that this my interest has been mostly in the calorimeters, and that's what I'm involved with. And this is going to be a sort of great detector because it's going to be very fine granularity. So you can see these kind of silicon modules, and each of them will have like almost 200 independent readouts. So we will have millions of such channels, which will allow us to do a complete 3 to 4 dimension pattern recognition and how the particle showers evolve in the detector. So we are pretty much set for what is going on and what is upcoming. So I think that's pretty much from my side. And I would say the way the different experiments the results are coming out, for example, something came out for the lepton flavor violation, and then we have results from the AMS and all for the high photon flux and things like that. It's pretty interesting to have all the things put together. And these are the exciting times, so looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Seema, do I understand that you are involved in the design and making of the detectors in this big project?
So for these ones, the designs are already set, and in India we are mostly doing the testing part and the algorithmic developments. So I'm involved in, for example, so I'm involved in, for example, testing for all these in the test beams. So we have put these detectors in the test beams. And right now we are understanding all the systems. So this was system I have. For example, this one is from my lab only. So this is small testing we are doing here and trying to develop the calibration mechanisms and all.
Understand. And these detectors are based on silicon, is it?
This one is silicon. So the idea is that these two sections will be silicon because they are more radiation hard. And this particular, phase will be really high radiation exposure. And also because this is more close to the beam pipe. So these are all because of the radiation hardness, it will be all silicon. And beyond that, we can have some sort of a scintillators. So these will be nice 3 by 3 centimeter scintillator tiles, which will be read out by the silicon photomultipliers on detector. So in that sense, it's a high-end technology, and this will make us sort of a base for the future colliders, the 100 TeV colliders, for example.
I see.
So this will be the please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. We have one general question from Professor Bhaskaran. Can dark matter form black hole-like objects by gravitational collapse?
Well, that is question a little bit beyond my expertise. Because the interactions will come in picture, and as far as we are seeing the whole effects of the dark matter via the gravitational impact, perhaps, but I'm not sure. I think some expert has to comment on this one.
Okay. There's another question by Professor Bhaskaran. IANO's plan for dark matter search. Is there something you can say about that?
So there has been a discussion about this one, even in there was a prototype detector to be built in the Jadugoda mine, and I think that moved on but a bit slowly, but hopefully that can pick up the speed now, and then it can move to the deeper mine, which is supposed to be in the IANO. So the final detector is supposed to come in the IANO cavern.
All right. Okay, thanks a lot, Seema, for a very nice
Thank you very much
talk and exposure to this really big mega project. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I had to rush, but I can come back again whenever there's an opportunity.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.